I think the best way to get started once you've decided to go down the adoption process is just to start.
Welcome to Heart to Heart with Anna. I am Anna Jaworski and the host of your program. Today's show is Heart Warrior Choosing Adoption, and our guest is Owen Brenna Isaacson. We'll start today's program by learning a little bit more about Brenna in segment 1. In the second segment, we're going to talk to her about her decision to adopt, and in the final segment, we'll get some advice from Brenna for other heart warriors who are thinking of going with the adoption route themselves. Brenna Isaacson is an adult living with and thriving with a congenital heart defect. She has a single ventricle heart and was born with tricuspid atresia, amongst other defects. She had her initial Fontan at 18 months of age and a revision at 23 years old. Living with a pacemaker, she is relatively healthy and not prepared to risk her health by getting pregnant. After marrying an amazing man, she realized she wanted to start a family. From the beginning, they felt that adoption was a perfect choice for them, especially after extensively talking with Brenna's doctors about the risk pregnancy would be to her health. So welcome to Heart with Anna, Brenna.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you, and I'm so excited I finally have you on the program. I know you wrote to me several months ago wanting to be on the show, so it's good that we're finally getting a chance to talk about this really, really important topic.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited.
You told me in your bio that you were born with tricuspid atresia and some other defects. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you were born with and when you were born?
So I was born in 1984, and I actually called my mom to ask her about my defect. We don't really have the best understanding of it, to be quite honest, just because when I was about 2 months old, I did have a Gore-Tex shunt placed, and then while I grew, it did not, so I turned blue. And then I had about 4 months of being a blue baby, and my parents got stopped in the grocery store. Your daughter is cold, put a coat on her. And of course, nobody understood really. So then I had the Fontan at 18 months old, and just like a lot of people maybe have heard, they didn't know. Maybe I was cured. We don't know. So basically just went on with my life. I had a very normal childhood, a little cautious, no contact sports. Definitely anytime I met a new doctor, the first words out of my mouth were I've had open heart surgery. And so we just led a very normal, somewhat cautious life. And to be honest, I didn't really know much about my condition or anybody else who might have had it. I hadn't met anybody else until my 20s. And when I went off to college, when I went off to college, my doctor printed me out a list of 11 different defects that I was born with. And I just carried it around with me and took it to doctors as needed. But by then, things were all computerized, and it was easy for people to just share information about me without me really needing to know too much, to be honest. I was blissfully unaware.
Wow.
And then, and so that was kind of my childhood.
But that's great. So it sounds like you had a relatively normal childhood after you had your open heart surgery, which you probably don't even remember because you were just a baby.
Yes, I don't remember anything about it. I actually have a scar across my chest. I don't have the typical vertical zipper. I have a horizontal zipper. And so even then, I didn't really have to talk about it much because it was hidden.
Sure.
I would wear a shirt and no one would know. No one would be the wiser. I'd actually proudly tell people about my surgery if they asked about me. It was kind of a little trivia fact about me, not really like the main header or anything. Yeah.
How interesting. Okay. So you had your first Fontan when you were 18 months of age, right? And you led a normal life after your Fontan.
Yeah. And quite honestly, up until I was about 22, when 22 hit, I started having arrhythmia, and I went into the hospital in Boston for an ablation. And one of the doctors was surprised I didn't have a pacemaker. It's like, you're 22. How do you not have a pacemaker already? And I sent him out of there. I was like, what are you talking about, a pacemaker? Never even heard this word in relation to anyone under the age of 70. There's no way.
Oh, wow.
And I was confused. He wanted to put a pacemaker in me that weekend, and I talked him out of it, which eventually I would have it. But I had an ablation, and I had a cardioversion with Dr. Wu. You've interviewed Dr. Wu.
I love Dr. Wu.
Me too. Actually, probably my all-time favorite cardiologist I've had.
He's so good. And he really listens.
He does. Actually, I was in for one of my first cardioversions ever. And I was in Boston. My whole family was in Los Angeles. And he held my hand while I went in. And it was just a very nice moment that I could just trust him and feel a lot less alone. So
oh my gosh, that makes such a big difference in your recovery period.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
So it was nice. I've actually written him a little thank you before.
Aw. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that makes a huge difference. You've had some great doctors who have worked with you. That's wonderful.
Yes, definitely.
So you said you had a Fontan revision at 23. Did you go from having an intracardiac Fontan to an extracardiac Fontan? Because you're, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, you're an old Fontaner.
Yes.
Just like my son.
I am. I'm a proud old Fontaner.
I know. That's awesome. So when you had it over 20 years ago, the only kind of Fontan they did was an intracardiac Fontan. But now there's so many different options. So I was just curious if you went from having an intra to an extra.
And I have no idea. They said we need to do a Fontan revision. I said, okay. It actually wasn't as cut and dry as that. But when I was 22, I started having my arrhythmia. And then I went back to Los Angeles after college in 2007. And I was feeling bad one day, the Friday before Labor Day. And I ended up needing an emergency pacemaker placement. I was all ready to go out dancing that night.
Oh.
I emailed Dr. Wu and his team. They said, go to the ER right now. So I went to the ER and they admitted me because my heart rate was in the high 30s. Yeah.
That's really
and
scary.
I wouldn't even let them take my dancing shoes off because I was still committed to going out that night. I was a 23-year-old healthy woman living my best life.
Yeah.
But eventually they took them off. And they said, we're going to do a pacemaker and we'd also like to do a Fontan revision. And this was Labor Day 2007.
Wow.
And this was a new team. This is the UCLA team that we eventually grew to tolerate, but we were not happy with how everything was going because it was a very stressful time, right? I ended up in the ER. I didn't know these people. They were talking about open heart surgery.
Yeah.
It was just a very scary time. My mother is one of my biggest advocates, and she's just like, no, take a step back. We'll take the problems as they come. So my brother was actually getting married later that month. So we decided to do the Fontan in December of 2007 instead of rushing into it just then.
Wow.
They were fine with, they gave me some medication for my arrhythmia. I gained a lot of weight because I ate a lot of mac and cheese. I was a little depressed perhaps, but this was my first time of actually having something that was affecting my life more than not just an ablation or not just a cardioversion, but those things that happened in Boston were much easier to handle. They kind of came and then they left, right? I felt better. And this was actually like a huge change to my life. So we put off the Fontan until December, and I ended up having the Fontan on December 11th, 2007. And it was a hard recovery for me. And it was with a maze procedure as well. I don't know if that's common or not with the Fontan.
My son had that too because of arrhythmias. And while they're in there, it's just easier to go ahead and do an ablation.
Do it.
Directly on the heart. So my son also had that. Yeah, you sound so much like my son. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I had the Fontan revision with the maze procedure, and I had never heard of extra cardiac until today. So I don't know about all of that stuff, but I do know that it helped me immensely. The recovery was terrible, but by the end of 2008, I had one more ablation in 2008. And then honestly, I think that's the last time I've been in the hospital since for something besides a pacemaker replacement or something related to fertility and all that stuff.
Wow. So 12 years.
Yeah, 12 years since I've had any episodes.
Wow.
The pacemaker did wonders. I mean, anytime I slipped into arrhythmia, they could just kind of pace me out of it. And that's fantastic. That's cool. That's nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've kind of had a whirlwind of a medical education.
Yes.
Since you were 23. So it's like you had a procedure that you don't even remember when you were a little kid, and you went all these years without having anything, and then boom, you really had your eyes opened quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a rude awakening to this whole world. And then after I was fixed for the second time, I guess, as I started to think about it, I met other people. I joined Facebook groups. I met women in Los Angeles. We were actually part of a fun little CHD fashion show that they did for TV. Yeah, it was great. So I met all these women, and I just had no idea that this community existed or these people even existed. Camps existed. There was just so much that totally outside my purview. So it was a very interesting education where, oh, wow, people live with this in different ways.
Texas Heart Institute were offering us a mechanical heart, and he said, no, Dad, I've had enough. Give it to someone who's worthy.
My father promised me a golden dress to twirl in. He held my hand and asked me where I wanted to go.
Whatever strife or conflict that we experienced in our long career together was always healed by humor.
Heart to Heart with Michael. Please join us every Thursday at noon Eastern as we talk with people from around the world who have experienced those most difficult moments.
This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
You are listening to Heart with Anna. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our show, please send an email to Anna Jaworski at anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. That's anna@hearttoheartwithanna.com. Now, back to Heart with Anna.
Let's start this segment, Brenna, by talking about your husband. When did you meet and how long have you been married?
Yeah, so my husband and I met on Match.com in 2012, and an hour date that we were supposed to have turned into 4 hours of walking around the park talking about everything.
Aww.
And we got married yeah, we're a cute couple. We got married in 2016, so we've been married almost 4 years now.
Oh my goodness, that's so neat. I'm hearing more and more people who are meeting thanks to the internet.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I definitely dated from the internet, but I was happy to find somebody to actually settle down with, and we could share our values and our lives together.
That's so neat. Can you share with me why you and George felt adoption was the ideal path for you to grow your family?
Definitely. Yeah. So I was actually cleared for pregnancy by my cardiologist. I am relatively healthy. I take 81 milligrams of aspirin every day, but otherwise pretty okay, knock on wood. And so the CHD group at UCSF, where I am now in San Francisco, has a special clinic where you can talk to both the cardiologist and the OB group at the same time about the process.
That's great.
It just became very clear. It was a very cool clinic. It just became very clear in that clinic that they just had no idea what to expect, and we have no idea what to expect. Pregnancy is taxing for any female body, regardless of heart condition.
Sure.
And so adding the heart condition level on top of that, we just didn't know. And for me, I had never actually felt the need to be pregnant. It's a very cool and interesting process. You get to make life. But it was something that when I was younger, one of the doctors said, well, before you get pregnant, you'll have to have another surgery. This was before my Fontan revision. And I immediately said, okay, I won't get pregnant. Fine. Like, not a problem.
Okay.
And so for me, it just wasn't something that I felt I needed to do. And I understand that for some women, that's what they want, and they want to go through that process. And that's fantastic for them. And I'm glad that for some of us, we do have that choice now, as long as you speak to your doctor about it.
Just wondering if that was also the way George felt.
George and I are very happy to be co-parents. Neither of us want to be single parents. And so whatever that means for us, if that means that we can lower my risk of heart failure or death, we're going to do it. We want to be in it together.
You know what? That's so pragmatic. Yeah. No, that's brilliant.
Yes, we're pragmatic.
No, I just think that's brilliant. You're absolutely right. It makes sense that you want to co-parent. Neither one of you wants to be a single parent in this scenario. I admire the people who can do it. I have a fabulous husband, and I can't imagine going through parenting my two sons without my husband. I don't know how people do it. I mean, you do what you have to do, especially when it comes to being a parent. But to go into this with your eyes wide open, you already know that this could this will tax your body, and you're not exactly sure how badly pregnancy would tax your body. Believe me, sweetie, just being a mom, it's going to tax you. I mean, you're
just the tax,
trying to keep up with a little one, and you're not going to get all the sleep that you got before you had a child. And things change. Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the things that came up in the conversation, was that my heart pressures are at a high level for Fontan, but within range.
Sure.
And for a normal person, they're very high, but for a Fontan, they're within range. However, with pregnancy, my heart pressures would definitely go up. They could pretty much say that.
Sure.
And would they come back down? We don't know. Or would I be on a new drug for the rest of my life to maintain those pressures? And so that was just one thing that may not have affected me too much, but then the pressures meant that maybe my liver would get affected faster or sooner than it is currently getting affected. And there's just things that I live with that I know eventually might happen. Liver disease, I already have some sort of fibrosis happening. Perhaps it will happen at a quicker rate with pregnancy. So to me, if I can hold off heart failure or liver disease or even death by 10 years, that means 10 more years with my kid. That means 10 more years with my husband. And that just means that maybe I'll be able to see my kid graduate high school or college, or maybe even one day get married. And those are the things that I want to be there for. And even on a more immediate scale, if something happens during pregnancy and I end up in the ICU for 3 weeks, I'm missing 3 weeks of my child's life, the first 3 weeks of their life. Just things like that, where the less time I can be in the hospital and the more time I can spend with my family is what I want.
Yeah.
However that family comes to be.
It sounds to me like you and George have given this a lot of thought.
We have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of thought and a lot of talk. I mean, we talk a lot about this.
No, I think that's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, not all young people do this. Not all young people really give such careful consideration to their future. I think that this is a sign of how mature you and your husband are, that you've even considered this. So of course, my next question is, have you ever considered surrogacy? And if you have, why you have chosen not to go that route?
Yes, and we did consider surrogacy. So we had committed to doing one round with surrogacy, and it didn't work. It turns out that women with chronic illness sometimes create fewer eggs. And I've never been tested for fertility issues because I didn't really think about that.
Sure.
So I don't even know if I have issues or not. During the process, I just knew that I wasn't going to be putting my body through it again. The hormones, and then I had to be on Lovenox for blood thinners. And so it was just a lot of extra. I knew I didn't want to do again. The retrieval was actually 2 days after my 35th birthday. And I spent my birthday throwing up due to a massive migraine because of all of the extra hormones that were surging through my body. I get hormonal migraines, and I know that. And this was terrible. So we just decided it wasn't worth trying again. But also, even if surrogacy had worked, we had always planned to adopt our second kid.
Oh, really?
That was the same way we looked at pregnancy. Even if we did pregnancy once, as we had gone to the clinic and we were checking it out and all of that, said, I'm only doing it once. Adoption is going to be our second kid.
Wow.
So we're just excited to just jump to that. We're just jumping right straight to adoption.
Okay. So I didn't know that with the surrogacy, you had to take all those extra drugs.
Yeah. So in order to do the egg retrieval, you have to basically go through the IVF rounds. And that might be different if you're 21 and just have a bunch of eggs and young and all of that. I don't know. But for us, it was to create extra eggs so that they could get out as many as possible in one round. It was basically IVF drugs, all the hormones, plus the added anticoagulant of Lovenox to make sure that I didn't have any clots during the process.
Wow, that's amazing. I had no idea it was so involved. I'm impressed that you went through it once, considering how complicated that sounds.
Yeah, it was a bit.
But it sounds to me like it has solidified your decision to adopt.
Yes, it has. We're just so excited about the adoption process.
Tonight Forever by the Baby Blue Sound Collective. I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever.
Hi, my name is Jamie Alcroft, and I just published my new book, The Tin Man Diaries. It's an amazing story of my sudden change of heart as I went through a heart and liver transplant. I can think of no better way to read The Tin Man Diaries than to cuddle up in your favorite Hearts Unite the Globe sweatshirt and your favorite hot beverage, of course, in your Hearts Unite the Globe mug, both of which are available at the Hug Podcast Network online store, or visit heartsunitetheglobe.org.
Heart to Heart with Anna is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a non-profit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more.
I'm sure a lot of people have been giving you advice now that you're married and you've decided to grow your family. So what is the best piece of advice that anyone has given you so far?
Yeah, we get lots of advice. I think the best piece of advice is to always have snacks for you or your husband. Hanger happens. For us, actually, I think my best advice comes from just watching my parents. They have a very strong relationship. My mother was actually not somebody who wanted to have kids growing up. And then she met my father and decided this was somebody with whom she would take that step.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I think that when I was always looking for a partner, I always saw it like that, as a partner, somebody that made it worth it, made the process even maybe easier or just more interesting or more fun. And so the advice that I took away from that is really that this is a partnership with feelings and compromises and ideas and a lot of talking. So adoption is a very complex process, and it comes from a place of loss for everybody involved, the birth parent, the child we're not having. And so you're going to have a lot of feelings and a lot of ideas are going to come up and a lot of thoughts are going to come up. And the best thing is just the communication aspect of it. Being honest with both myself and with my partner has just been really helpful and necessary. I chose George. He chose me. We choose to do this together. And so let's do it as a team and go forth and conquer parenthood.
I love that. I too believe that communication is essential. You have to be open with each other, and I really feel to have a successful marriage, you must be a good communicator with your spouse. My husband and I are getting ready to celebrate 34 years of marriage this year.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
It is. I'm really proud of us because it's not easy. And I feel more in love with my husband today than the day that I married him. And I really didn't think that was going to be possible.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I feel very lucky that I found such an amazing man to marry.
Yes.
I'm sure that there are other adults with congenital heart defects who would love to adopt, but they have no idea how to get started. So what do you think is the best way to get started?
Well, besides having that conversation with your partner, your significant other, whatever that might be, and just kind of laying it all out on the table with each other, I think the best way to get started once you've decided to go down the adoption process is just to start. It is so overwhelming. The process is overwhelming. The feelings are overwhelming. And you can go down a rabbit hole on Google. You can do a lot of searching. You can read some great stories, some terrible stories, and everything in between. I think that for us, just showing up to an adoption agency info session that they had, it was a free info session, just showing up and hearing about the process and understanding fees and different options and different ideas was great. It really helped us get the fire started and helped us get going. We went to a couple other info sessions. There's only really, I think, 2 agencies in San Francisco that are the main ones. And so we went to both their info sessions and learned a lot and then talked a lot with each other and then just jumped right in. There are a lot of ways to go about it, whether that's an agency or no agency or using a lawyer or whatever it might be, but just trying to get as much information as possible direct from sources, not just Google searches, is really helpful.
Yeah. I imagine going online could be really overwhelming, although I understand that there are some adoption Facebook groups and that there's a lot of support out there.
Yes. And that is another thing. I mean, if your listeners want to talk to me, I'm happy to discuss what I do know. Obviously, I'm very open about the whole process as I'm going through it. I do think that Facebook groups that are specific to this would be very helpful, especially if you're in an area that might not have an agency or info sessions. However, just making sure that the conversations that you are having are specific and more, I guess, from people who have been through it, right? Not just the open search bar.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So what keeps you going and keeps you optimistic about your choice to adopt?
I am so excited to meet our child. I know that everyone is excited to meet their child, whether you have it in your belly or you're adopting or you're doing surrogacy, whatever it may be. If you decide to become a parent, you're excited to meet that child that you're going to have. And I know my husband and I would make an adorable biological child. We both have amazing hair. That kid would have good hair. But we also know that our child is going to be amazing anyway. We feel very confident in our parenting skills. I mean, we haven't done it yet, but we feel very confident that we're going to do the best we can with our child, for our child, however they come to us. And we're just excited to have them in our lives. Every morning we sing to our dog. So even if that silly genetics is not coming through to them, they're still going to be bathed in silliness and love and excitement for life. And so we feel that we can nurture that love and excitement with them.
I love that. That's so sweet.
I'm sorry.
No, I love that. I think that's so sweet. And I'm kind of curious, are you insisting that your child be an infant, or are you open to adopting an older child?
We are looking at agencies that work with birth mothers before they give birth. So we are expecting our first to be an infant. I would like to go through the stages of parenthood from the beginning so that I understand all of them as they come. And I know you can never be fully prepared for parenthood. I get that. I think I would like to kind of just maybe follow the roadmap more versus having all of a sudden a 5-year-old in my house and not knowing. I don't even know what 5-year-olds can do. Can they read? Can they write? I don't know what these things are. We're happy to educate ourselves no matter what the challenge is with our child and reach out for help as needed. However, I think for us, we just want to start with an infant. And then as we grow and understand parenthood and childhood, we will consider our options for our second. We have looked into foster to adopt. Unfortunately, we do have a pit bull mix. She's adorable and does have her own Instagram, but San Francisco does not allow foster parents to have pit bulls at home, which is unfortunate.
Wow.
So it seems like an archaic ideology of pit bulls, but we understand that it still happens. And so we have looked into foster to adopt, and maybe someday that will be our plan. But for now, we are looking at an infant, hopefully.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. It sounds to me like you and George and your pit bull fur baby have a lot of love to give to somebody. I think you're going to be a wonderful family.
Oh, thank you so much. That was very sweet. Thank you.
I hope you'll come back on the show when you get the baby and tell us all about it, because I think this is going to be quite a journey.
I would love that. I'm happy to share all of it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program today and talking to me about this really important topic, Brenna.
Thank you for having me. I've had such a great time.
Oh, me too. It has been so much fun. So that does conclude this episode of Heart to Heart with Anna. Thanks for listening today. Please come back next week on Tuesday at noon Eastern Time. And until then, you can always visit us at heartsunitetheglobe.org. And remember, my friends, you are not alone.
Thank you again for joining us this week. We hope you have been inspired and empowered to become an advocate for the congenital heart defect community. Heart to Heart with Anna, with your host Anna Jaworski, can be heard every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time.